The mirror room test, why it was banned after one volunteer screamed for 6 days. They called it a test of perception, nothing more. The mirror room test was marketed to select psychology departments, military contractors, and private think tanks as an advanced sensory research study, a way to understand how humans processed isolation, reflection, and the mind's response to its own image over long durations. But behind the sterile white paper abstracts and grant proposals was something far older, far more ancient, and deeply wrong. No one truly knew who had designed the original mirror room. Rumors pointed to a German occultist in the 1930s, others traced it back to a derelict asylum in Prague where patients allegedly vanished without record. What was consistent was this: a sealed, temperature-controlled chamber with every wall, floor, and ceiling made of mirror. Not standard mirror glass, but a peculiar silvered surface with no distortions, no seams, and no backing. You could see yourself from every angle. Even beneath your feet, your face stared back at you. No furniture. No clock. No color. No sound. Just you, and infinite, perfect versions of you. Watching. In 2021, a private research facility in the Scottish Highlands quietly acquired the room after it had been found in a storage unit in Wales, miscategorized as part of a theatrical prop collection. The team consisted of neuroscientists, psychologists, a handful of interns, and one test subject, a 26-year-old man named Callum Reeves. Healthy. Curious. Mildly claustrophobic, but otherwise unremarkable. He had volunteered for what was described to him as a perceptual endurance challenge, with a prize of £30,000 for completing a full 72 hours inside. They never expected him to last that long. The room had no visible cameras, only small sensors embedded in the corners, and a one-way communication system through which researchers could check in. The room was also soundproof, which meant they couldn't hear him. Only see him. The moment the mirrored door clicked shut, Callum laughed. "It's weird," he said over the speaker. "Feels like I'm inside a kaleidoscope." He looked around, waving at himself on all sides. The reflections moved perfectly in sync, no latency, no delay. At first, it was amusing. Then, unsettling. Within 15 minutes, he asked if the lights could be dimmed. There were no lights to dim. The room was lit without shadows, though no source could be identified. It was a soft, silvery glow, neither warm nor cold, that seemed to come from nowhere. He commented on that, too. "I can't see where the light is. It's like I'm glowing." Hour 1 passed. He paced. Saturday. Stood again. His own gaze in every direction began to annoy him. He joked into the microphone, "They're all staring. I feel like I'm on trial." By hour 2, he covered his eyes with his hands. By hour 4, he was talking to himself. Not in the usual sense. He began speaking with his own reflection. "You're not me," he whispered at one point, pressing his hand against the mirrored wall. "You blinked too fast." The team noted changes in posture. He no longer stood upright. He tilted his head slightly when observing himself, like studying a stranger. The blood oxygenation levels were normal. Heart rate elevated, but within stress range. But when they reviewed the video later, they noticed something they hadn't caught live: the reflected Callum did blink at the wrong time. At hour 6, Callum began speaking in hushed tones, asking the team to please mute the others. When asked what he meant, he replied, "The ones behind me. I can hear them breathing." The room was silent. No air vents, no audio. At hour 9, he refused to eat. The water bottle was untouched. He began backing into a corner, keeping his face to the room, like a man in the wild warding off predators. "They're moving," he said, again and again. "They move when I blink." At hour 12, he screamed. It was short, at first. Startled. Like someone touched him. Then came the prolonged, primal scream that lasted nearly 2 minutes. He clawed at the mirrored walls, not to escape, but to see behind them. He peeled fingernails off trying to wedge his fingers into non-existent seams. His pupils dilated to full black. At hour 16, he passed out. But his eyes stayed open. He came to at hour 17 and asked a single question, "Am I out?" The team debated ending the test. But they didn't. Curiosity outweighed caution. Hour 22, Callum started humming. A slow, dissonant melody, unfamiliar. When asked what it was, he said it was the song they're singing now. He refused to explain further. His reflection, he claimed, had grown bored of imitating him. At hour 27, he was laughing hysterically. Crawling in circles. Whispering that he knew the secret: they're not mirrors. They're windows. I thought I was seeing myself, but I'm seeing themselves. He begged to leave. He began bleeding from his eyes. At hour 30, the room was filled with what appeared to be breath mist, as though the temperature had dropped, but the temperature inside was stable. Even the sensors couldn't explain it. At hour 32, the team decided to pull him out. That's when he started screaming again. This time, he didn't stop. They sedated him after 6 full days of uninterrupted shrieking. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. His vocal cords bled. He should have gone unconscious. He didn't. The neurologist on staff said it wasn't physical endurance, it was something else. Something inherited. He's not screaming from pain anymore, she said. He's screaming from recognition. He was institutionalized. He never said another word. Only a low, wet gargle in the back of his throat, like someone trying to cough up a secret. The facility was quietly shut down. The mirror room dismantled. But the walls, they wouldn't stop reflecting. Even outside the frame. Someone from the dismantling crew claimed the panels still showed him, even when laid flat on the floor, even when covered in cloth. One of the lead researchers disappeared 3 weeks later. Her apartment was found in perfect condition. Her body wasn't. Just a handprint on her bathroom mirror. Too large to be hers. Pressed from the inside. No academic journal ever published the data. The footage was buried. Callum's name was erased from the volunteer registry. But the interns never forgot. One of them, now much older, once shared his memory during a private conference on psychological trauma. When asked what disturbed him the most, he simply said, there were moments when his reflection didn't match. But not all the reflections. Just one. Just one version of him, in one mirror, would be looking at something else. Moving slower. Moving wrong. But the others still mimicked him perfectly. It was like one mirror was watching. They asked him why the experiment was banned. He looked pale, like remembering a sound that never stopped ringing. Because it wasn't a test of perception, he said. It was a test of containment. And we failed. The room was sealed in a private warehouse under armed surveillance for 2 years. Not because it was dangerous, but because no one could figure out how to destroy it. They tried everything: thermal lances, acid baths, sonic disruption, even concentrated laser cutting. The mirrored panels absorbed everything without a scratch. Not a chip. Not even a fingerprint. And worse, they still reflected. Not just the warehouse. Not just the lights. But things that weren't there. The night guard reported seeing children dancing in the reflections when he passed through the hallway on his patrol. A child with no eyes, holding hands with his own shadow. He quit after 3 weeks, left a note that simply read, "I saw myself blink in the wrong direction." The footage was reviewed. He wasn't lying. Then came the whispers. One of the junior scientists started working late, obsessively playing back the mirror room footage frame by frame. Her notes, recovered after she was found collapsed in the hallway, half muttering in an unfamiliar language, spoke of something trapped behind the silver. A presence that didn't reflect, but remembered. That each mirror was a page, and the room as a whole was a book. Written in imitation. Read by repetition. She described a concept she called the reverse observer. A sentient entity that doesn't watch you, but makes you watch yourself so completely, so obsessively, that your identity collapses in on itself. You begin to forget where you end and your reflection begins. You surrender your will, and something else takes your place. She wrote, the screaming wasn't fear. It was shedding. He wasn't trying to leave the room, he was trying to keep himself from leaving with it. Security footage from the storage facility 1 month later confirmed a motion event at 3:14 a.m. One panel, stored flat and wrapped in blackout cloth, appeared to pulse. The cloth fell off. A faint shadow, too thin to be human, but shaped like one, crawled across the opposite wall and vanished before anyone could arrive. The scientist was transferred. Her mind broke cleanly, like glass under pressure. She was committed to a facility that doesn't take names. On a good day, she sits by the mirror in her room and smiles. But never at herself. Always just to the left. Always just off-center. Callum Reeves died in 2024. Or rather, his body did. Doctors couldn't explain it. Cardiac failure during routine sleep monitoring. No prior symptoms. But what disturbed the coroner was this: his eyes were open. Fully. As if he were awake. And yet his pupils were pinpricks, as though he had been staring into the sun for hours. The hospital mirror across from his bed had been removed by order of the attending nurse. She claimed that whenever she entered his room, she saw two Callums, one lying in bed, and one smiling in the mirror. It was that smile that made her leave. Too wide. Too calm. It didn't look like relief. It looked like someone who had waited a very, very long time. The room is no longer in the Highlands. It was sold. The buyer remains anonymous. The shipping company that transported the pieces recorded an unusual event during the final stretch of the journey. 2 of the crew vanished during an overnight stop. Their GPS trackers placed them inside the shipping crate, which had not been opened. When the crate was unpacked, they were gone. But the inside walls of the crate? Smudged with handprints. On the inside. As if someone, or something, had been pressing against it from within. Not in panic. Not in escape. Just watching. The company filed a formal complaint, but the buyer declined any further inquiry. The location of the mirror room is now classified. But here's the part that never made the reports. Every reflection recorded inside the room, every angle, every captured frame, still stored on encrypted drives, is corrupted in exactly the same way. At precisely 66 minutes into each session, there appears a 17th reflection. The room has only 16 mirrored surfaces. But this one stands where no surface exists. Directly behind the subject. Tall. Lean. Head slightly tilted. Its hands don't move. But its mouth does. Experts tried to extract audio, but the only thing recovered was a faint, pulsing static. When reversed and slowed, it resembled a voice whispering in a dialect not spoken in any known culture. Except one. An ancient desert language used in pre-Islamic rituals designed to trap jinn in mirrored prisons. A forgotten rite. A final warning. The translation? Let the self forget itself. Let the watcher pass through. There are those who believe the mirror room was never an invention. It was a rediscovery. A relic, left behind not for knowledge, but for containment. Not to see ourselves, but to see what waits on the other side of ourselves. If you ever see a mirror flicker, just once, when you're completely still, don't look again. Because the more you watch yourself, the less of you returns. The drives containing the original mirror room recordings were ordered destroyed in late 2024. But not all of them were. A curious technician made a personal backup. He didn't mean to do anything sinister, he was just fascinated. He'd watched the 6-day scream, read the redacted logs, seen the slowed-down footage of Callum flinching when his reflection didn't. The technician lived alone. He started replaying the footage every night after work. Then he started freezing specific frames. And then, he started talking to the figure behind Callum. The 17th reflection. "I know you're still in there," he'd whisper to the paused image. "I can feel you watching me too." His coworkers noticed changes. He began to mimic Callum's posture unconsciously. He blinked less. He spoke slower. His voice dropped an octave. And when he passed by reflective surfaces, computer monitors, metal trays, even puddles, he sometimes stopped and stared for far too long. Once, a coworker walked into the break room and found him grinning into a turned-off microwave. She asked what he was doing. He answered, "He says I look better now." They fired him the next day. But it didn't matter. Because the night after that, he removed every mirror from his home, except one. A small antique shaving mirror that had not been in his apartment before. The next morning, he was found curled up in the corner of his bathroom, skin cold but alive. All the lights were off. All the windows blacked out. Written on the wall in his own blood was a single phrase, repeated over and over. "Reflection is resurrection. He is behind the glass." They institutionalized him too. His mirror was confiscated. But no one ever found out who had given it to him. By early 2025, researchers who had been connected to the original project began to vanish one by one. Not dramatically, just gone. Deleted emails. Empty houses. But one left behind something strange, a handmade book, bound in cracked leather, filled with notes and drawings. On the final page, in heavy graphite, was a sketch of the mirror room as seen from above. And at the center of the room, not on the walls, not reflected, was a new shape. An eye. Open. Watching. Larger than any human face. Not drawn with precision, but with pressure. The graphite so dark it had worn through the paper. The eye had a vertical slit. Not like a human. Not like an animal. Something older. And written beneath it, in tiny, panicked lettering. I finally understood. We are not alone in the mirror. We are the visitors there. After that, sightings of wrong reflections spiked across certain parts of Europe and South America. People reported seeing themselves smiling when they weren't. Seeing blinks in the mirror that didn't align. Seeing their own reflections look away.
In one apartment complex in Madrid, an entire floor was abandoned overnight after a resident tried to film her reflection blinking out of sync. She uploaded the footage. The frame was blank. No mirrors. No face. Only one still image remained, a freeze frame showing her bedroom, with her reflection absent and a long, thin hand reaching in from the side of the screen. The file corrupted every device it touched, even when transferred physically. Then came the replicas. Not full doppelgangers, subtle wrongnesses. A man would come home and his wife would be waiting, smiling just a little too wide, asking questions she should already know the answers to. Children would sit at breakfast and hum songs their parents never taught them. A man brushed his teeth and saw his reflection use the wrong hand. Theories spread in dark forums. The mirror room was a gate, not a test. The reflections weren't simulations, they were invitations. Every time you catch your reflection acting funny, it's not a glitch. It's trying to get your attention. Once you notice it, it notices you back. And if it likes you, it doesn't wait. It replaces. One man, an urban explorer who broke into the abandoned Scottish facility, posted a grainy, flickering video titled "Inside the Mirror Room." It was taken on a shaky phone cam, dark and full of static. At first, it showed a large, mirrored panel covered in a gray tarp. Then the tarp began to rise, slightly, on its own. The screen turned black. When the video resumed, the man was staring at the camera, saying only, "It's not a room. It's a womb." Then the footage cut off. His account was deleted within an hour. His IP traced to nowhere. But here's the part they never wanted out. A former employee leaked one last file before disappearing. A scanned page from a translation of an 18th century text known only as Speculum Tenebris, or the Mirror of Darkness. It described an ancient rite of summoning, used not to call forth demons, but to summon oneself across the divide. A mirror, it said, was not merely reflection. It was parallel birth. Two versions. One natural. One not. One that learns. One that waits. And sometimes, if you open the door wide enough, one walks through. Not with violence, but with precision. You'll never know which version you are. You'll just blink one day, and something behind your eyes will feel slightly off. You'll look in the mirror. You'll see yourself. But the longer you stare, the more you'll start to wonder, what if the real me never came back out? And when you turn away, if you ever do, don't look back. Because the worst thing isn't the reflection mimicking you. It's the one that doesn't. It's the one that stays. Smiling. Long after you're gone. They never could trace the origin of the mirror room. Every attempt to pinpoint its craftsmanship, its materials, its design, even the alloy used in its frame, hit dead ends. Metallurgists called the mirrored surfaces non-reactive to earthly processes. One physicist quietly suggested they might not be made of matter at all. Just memory made solid. That word came up often, memory. Not as in recollection, but as in the mirror itself having its own. A memory of what it saw. Or what it used to be. There was one last volunteer. His name was Dr. Emil Hartrow, a cognitive scientist, skeptical of all the sensationalism. He believed it was all psychological suggestion, that Callum's screams had triggered a viral hysteria among researchers. He argued that if the mirror room was truly supernatural, it wouldn't need 6 days to unravel someone. He was granted clearance. But this time, protocols were tightened. Real-time audio and video. Emergency override within reach. A 2-hour maximum inside. Psychological prep. Full team on standby. Hartrow entered with a confident smile. The door sealed behind him. At first, he observed calmly. Took notes. He waved to himself. Smirked. Sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. At exactly 7 minutes and 40 seconds, he stood up and turned to face one of the mirrored walls. Then he laughed. Not a chuckle. Not amusement. A deep, sudden belly laugh like something had told a joke inside his head. The team asked what he found funny. He didn't answer. He simply tilted his head and whispered. It's already done. The emergency override was activated. The door wouldn't open. Power surged. Lights flickered. The temperature sensors maxed out at 49 degrees Celsius, yet Dr. Hartrow showed no signs of sweating. When the system rebooted, he was gone. Not dead. Not unconscious. Simply absent. His clothes remained in the center of the room, neatly folded. Shoes set beside them. Glasses placed precisely above. And on every mirrored surface, a version of Hartrow still stood, smiling with his head tilted in the same direction. Not mimicking. Just waiting. They called in a priest. Then a physicist. Then a demolitions expert. None could offer answers. The mirror room was sealed beneath concrete. Then steel. Then more concrete. But rumors began soon after. Of people dreaming in mirrored rooms. Of children talking to their reflections in unknown tongues. Of mirrors that didn't fog when breathed on, but pulsed, faintly, like lungs. And sometimes, very rarely, a person is reported missing. Not vanishing, no. They go on with their lives. Friends and family don't notice a thing. But the person knows. Something small. A shift. A second delay when blinking. A laugh that doesn't feel like their own. A sense that their thoughts echo too loudly inside their skull. And when they stare into the mirror for too long, they feel it. That tightening at the base of the spine. That prickling at the edge of thought. That other presence that is so familiar. Because it is you. But not quite. You with better posture. You with a steadier smile. You, with eyes that do not blink. You, watching from the other side. And waiting. Waiting for you to forget who you are, so it can come back through. There are no more mirror room tests. No more volunteers. But mirrors are everywhere now. Every phone. Every screen. Every polished doorknob. And every one of them remembers. Because the mirror room was never a room. It was a doorway. And the real test never ended. It just moved into your home. So tonight, when you brush your teeth, and catch yourself looking a little too long, and feel that shiver under your skin, like something else blinked with your face, ask yourself one question. Am I still the one on this side? And if you're lucky, you'll never find out. But not everyone is lucky. There are files, locked ones, circulating among a few private digital archives. Not government, not university. Individuals. People who were either part of the original experiment or pulled in by accident, like the technician, the intern, the security guard. Survivors, if you could call them that. They share notes quietly, under pseudonyms. Each has their own term for it: mirror sickness, split rot, silver touch. But the symptoms are always the same. You dream in reflections. You wake up in poses you don't remember falling asleep in. Your pets won't look you in the eye. You begin hearing sounds, soft and distant, when standing near a mirror. A voice, or breathing, or something tapping gently from behind. There's a photograph one of them shared. An old woman, standing in front of a vanity. She's smiling faintly. Nothing strange, until you zoom in. In the mirror, she's not smiling. She's gritting her teeth. And there's a hand resting on her shoulder. But no one else was in the room. Another member of the archive group posted a voice memo, a man sobbing, whispering over and over that his son wasn't his son. That he watched the boy brushing his teeth one night and saw the reflection turn its head before the real child did. He blinked twice, the man said. And his reflection didn't blink at all. He took all the mirrors out of his house. Taped over the screens. But still, at night, he saw it, his own face, hovering in the blackness of the unplugged TV. Then one day, his family woke up, and he was gone. Only a handwritten note remained. I don't know if I jumped through the mirror or if something pulled me in. Either way, I hope I'm the one who stayed. No one talks about it publicly. Who would believe it? That reflections can lie. That you can be replaced by a version of yourself with just enough of you inside to fool the people you love. And sometimes, even you. But it's spreading. Not like a virus. Like a pattern. Like something looking for mirrors that are vulnerable. Ones that have seen too much. Ones that have reflected someone for years. Because the longer a mirror knows you, the easier it is for something else to know you too. One archive member wrote in their final message, "Mirrors don't show you as you are. They show you as you're remembered. And when you're forgotten, something else gets to take your place." What does that mean? No one's certain. But consider this: why do mirrors exist in every culture? Why do we fear breaking them? Why do we cover them when someone dies? Not for tradition. Not for grief. To prevent something from slipping through. Because when a soul leaves the body, something else always tries to enter. And a mirror is the door that waits silently. Still. Open. Polished. And patient. So here's what you need to remember. Never stare into your own eyes for too long. Never trust a reflection that seems just slightly off. Never ignore the feeling that you're being watched in your own bathroom. And if you ever wake up in the middle of the night, and you swear you hear your own voice whispering from the mirror across the room, don't answer it. Don't walk closer. Don't try to understand. Because once you hear it, it means it already knows how to sound like you. And the next time someone sees you, smiling in the mirror when you're not, it won't matter who's real. Only who's seen. And that is how it begins again. They say mirrors don't lie. But they do. Not with words. With patience. They wait. They watch. And when you're at your weakest, when your mind is tired, when your thoughts begin to unravel, when you start to wonder if your reflection is truly you, that's when it reaches out. Just a flicker, a shift, a blink that doesn't match. And that's all it takes. You won't scream like Callum. You won't even run. You'll smile. Because it already knows how. Because it is you. And always has been. The mirror room is gone now, buried, sealed, forgotten by all but a few. But the reflections remain. In your hallway. In your phone screen. In the window at night when you think you're alone. You'll forget this story. But your mirror won't. It remembers. And it's waiting. And